Hi, how are you? Welcome back to Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park. We're back here doing our virtual Gold Rush Live. My name's Jerry. I am the volunteer coordinator here at Marshall Gold. Today we've already had 3 live experiences. We've talked to James Marshall, we talked to Mrs. Luther, who told us about butter churning and Dutch oven cooking, and we talked to Granny Carol just a little while ago. She showed us how to make some rope. Right now we're going to talk with Mrs. Murphy. She's here spinning, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about spinning wool and what they did with the wool and how they would dye the wool. So if you have any questions, please just put those in the comments and we can ask those a little bit later. But right now I am going to turn this over to Mrs. Murphy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not yet. Good afternoon. I'm Mrs. Murphy, and I'm here in this lovely park to explain to you a little bit about spinning wool. Many of you know that wool comes from sheep, but did you know there are 100 or more different kinds of sheep, and that different kinds of sheep give different kinds of wool? Some wool is very scratchy and doesn't spin up nicely, and so it's good for rugs or outerwear. Sometimes, like right now, you get a bit of grass or something in your wool and you want to pull that out so that your nice yarn is not full of little bits of grass or other kinds of things that sheep have picked up. But I've got a little bit ahead of myself. I could tell you about how we get the wool from the sheep. First of all, once it's determined that the sheep need shearing, a man will come with his big scissor-like shears and trim the sheep. And after that, the sheep are pretty happy because they're now cooler and they feel a little bit lighter. Well, after that, the fleece is then picked over, gotten out the dirty bits, kept the most of it so that it can be washed. And sometimes it has to be washed several times before it's really ready for spinning. When we get the fleece washed, the next step is to card it or comb it. Now I'm going to stop spinning here for a minute and explain a little bit about it with my hands. Cards are like wooden paddles that have these sharp metal pokey things on them, and you take your piece of fiber, you put it on the card, and then you just go like this back and forth, and that gets the fibers all going in the same direction. And then after a while, you have a very nice bat is what it's called, and it's pretty much laid out flat. This one happens to be in a rope shape, and we can just tear off a piece of this. It's ready for spinning. You might notice that it's not white. Well, I'm sure you've all heard about the black sheep of the family, and there are black sheep. There are also silver or gray sheep. There are tan sheep. There's a particular sheep that has black and tan and white fleece all on one sheep. And that's what this particular fiber is from. It's from a Jacob sheep. Another interesting thing about Jacob sheep is that they have 4 or 6 horns, and they go in different directions. So you can have the horns going frontwards, backwards, or off to the sides. And they're not very big. They're kind of cute. Well, I forgot what I was saying. But I do that a lot now. Gotten older. I brought my spinning wheel with me when I came from the east. I had got this spinning wheel from a cousin. She passed away, and so I got her spinning wheel and some of her fiber. Out here in Coloma, I can trade for a fleece and wash it and prepare it for spinning. And what do I do once I've got it spun? You may well ask this. It is a variety of things. For one thing, when you spin, it's pretty thin. I don't know if you can see how thin it is, but a person can use the very thin single ply yarn as it is, but if you want something thicker and stronger, you can take 2 thin or single pieces, and then you can ply them together. And by plying, I mean when I'm spinning the fleece to begin with, I'm spinning clockwise. When I ply, I'm going to take 2 singles, put them together, and then I'm going to have the wheel go anti-clockwise. So that is, I am not doing plying right now, but that makes the yarn a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger. The jerseys that some fishermen wear are made from that heavier plied yarn. The finer plied yarn can be made into shawls by knitting or by weaving. I don't know if you can see the rug that's on the floor or ground under my spinning wheel, but that was woven, and it's very sturdy. It is not wool, but it's very sturdy cotton fabric that was taken from old trousers that had been used by miners, and then as it wore out, the women folk could take the old pants and cut them into strips and then sew the strips together and then weave the rugs that are very long lasting. But as for spinning, let me get up and show you over here what I've got. So here is a shawl that is made from all natural hand spun wool. The gray is from a gray sheep. No, it wasn't dyed in any way. And the white was from a white sheep. And there is a little bit of a border on this, and I found that yarn somewhere and have no idea exactly what they used to dye that. But over here I have some a variety of yarns that were hand spun, and they were dyed with things that you can find right here, or that we have found right here. And then the other one, this red, is, you're not going to believe this. This is very interesting. There were some people that came from Peru, and they brought these little bugs called cochineal. And these cochineal, when you crush them, they turn red, and they dye things beautifully. So here's some different varieties. This is all cochineal. This one was the first in the dye bath, and then this one was later as it started to wear out. The color, I mean. This one is dyed over a dark sheep, like a dark brown sheep. Now, how many people know about walnuts? They're great in cakes and cookies and just eating plain. But they also make a wonderful dye. And these yarns were dyed with walnut. About the yellow is from lichen. Now, you've seen lichen. It's all around you on trees. You don't want to pull it off the tree, but when it falls off the tree, you can gather it up. Oh yes, there you go.
There's some lichen that we just pulled off the tree, or we picked up off the ground.
No, you did not. I saw you pick it up.
I picked it up off the ground.
All right, so these ones were dyed with lichen, and it's a gorgeous yellow. It's really pretty. So those are dyes that we found right here in Coloma, except that I said the cochineal was brought up here by not only the Peruvians, but I believe the Californios also had access to the bugs, the cochineal bugs.
I have a question about the walnuts. Do you use the walnut hulls to dye with?
Yes.
The walnut hulls. Okay.
Walnut hulls and sometimes the pieces of shell. You don't want to put the walnut nut in. You're going to eat those.
Right. Thank you.
All right. I don't have. I do have a ball of yarn. Now, some people think that the yarn is just always in a ball, but it is not. It's usually, once you're done spinning, you're going to put it in one of these, which is called a skein. Then, when it's time to knit with it or weave with it, you want to get it into a ball. And this is, I've forgotten the name of it, so please forgive me, but this is a ball winder that you can make this kind of a, just put it away, this kind of a ball. You start your, I don't have anything to demonstrate, sorry, but you put your yarn on and you just start winding it, and you keep winding it, and then it slides off the skinny end. And then you can pull the yarn from the center. So that makes it nice. Your ball doesn't go sliding across the floor or rolling across the floor. Another thing that I was going to talk to you about spinning is how nice it is. It's rhythmic. You can sit and you can almost drift off sleeping, especially if you've been up all night with the sick child. But what is also good about it is that when the children are playing, or when you're watching your husband at work, chopping wood or whatever he may be doing around the place, you can be busy and still sit and watch. And and when you're done, you have wonderful yarn.
So we had a question about your shawl. They
Yes.
wanted to know how long it took you to make that. And I'm wondering if you can tell us maybe how long it might take to spin that much yarn and then also to knit it.
For me personally, I will tell you that the spinning goes fairly quickly. I'm not sure, because I've never done it all at one time, how long it would take to then knit enough exactly for one project, one sweater, but when it's probably, for me, it would take less time to do the spinning than it would be to do the knitting. Other people would say it's just the opposite. I'm trying to remember, it's been several years since I've knitted that. Maybe 20 hours.
Just for the knitting part?
Yeah.
Okay. And then how long would it take you to spin like one of those skeins of yarn?
Oh, 4 or 5 hours.
Oh, okay.
There's not very much in those skeins. it the bobbin. Oh, would you like to know a little bit about the spinning wheel parts? I can tell you a
Sure.
little bit about them. Many people have come up and noticed this little string here and thought it was part of my actual spinning, but it is the drive band. So this string is connecting the large wheel to this small wheel, which is called a whirl, W-H-O-R-L, and the whirl is connected to the flyer, which is the part that's holding the bobbin. These two pieces are the footmen. They're holding the flyer and the bobbin. There's a tension here that helps keep the tension on the bobbin so that it goes smoothly. And then down here is this part here is the footmen. And I said the footmen were over here. I forgot what those are called. Sorry. This is the treadle, and I could be wrong about this. This might be the footman, and I'm wrong about this one, but I apologize if I am wrong. So then the treadle drives these footmen, makes the large wheel go round, it makes the whirl go round, it makes the flyer go round. You might notice these hooks. The hooks are there so that as you're spinning, you can wind the bobbin evenly down the, we spin the yarn evenly down the bobbin. And I'll just, you do not want your fiber to go in the leaves, but sometimes they do. All right. Some people want to know how you attach the yarn once you've come to the end. And so I will just show you that you take your fresh fiber here, and I usually just lay it along the spun part, lay it along there, and then I just start to spin. Oh, I also had thought to tell you, some spinning is very old. Before there were spinning wheels, there were spindles. And a spindle is something like a top in that it has a large part and then a pointy part, and that pointy part is where the fiber winds onto as you're spinning. And people would spin it and then add the fiber into it, and it would wrap around the spindle. And maybe you wonder, is it only wool that is spun? And that's just not true. There is cotton. My dress is cotton, and many garments, people like cotton because it's light and airy, but it's got very short fibers, and so they're hard to spin. I am not adept at spinning cotton. Another fiber that you might have heard of is linen. Linen doesn't come from an animal, nor does cotton. Linen comes from a flax plant. And it's the linen part, the fibers, are inside the stalks. And they have to open those up and then spread them out, soak them really good, and then they drag them through a thing that looks like a rake, and they get those fibers all separated, and then they can spin them, but they have to keep it wet all the time while they're spinning. I also do not know how to spin flax, but I have seen it done. About the same time of flax, they also used nettles. And nettles, it was the same kind of thing. They had many fibers within the stalks. Also hemp. Hemp is very good. Hemp clothing lasts a very long time.
So we had a question from someone asking, what is the process of dyeing the wool?
What is the process? Well, first of all, you get your dye materials, and sometimes you need quite a bit. So like that one little piece of lichen that we picked up was not going to be enough to do anything with. You would have to get maybe a half pound, which would be a lot. And then you soak them in water, and then you can use like a vinegar to set the dye. And there's alum, and I know there's another agent that you use to help hold the dye to the fabric, but I can't think of it right now. And many times, or all the times that I've ever done it, I've boiled it. So we would have a big pot of water with the dye material in it, and then we would put our skeins of yarn into it, and then we have to move it around quite a bit so that it will get to all the parts of the fibers. It's also that you can put the fiber in before you spin it, and that way you've got a chance of it being even more evenly dyed.
So you would put that's on your lap that you haven't spun,
Mm-hmm.
you would put that in your dye pot.
Yes,
You could.
You could, definitely. And many people do that. Sometimes they will take it and lay it out, and then they can dribble some dye on it. But that doesn't work so well as putting it into the dye bath. Perhaps someday there'll be a way of doing that is as effective as the dye pot. That's another reason I noticed, or I'm aware that Mrs. I forgot her name, that did the cooking. She was talking about her wool apron, and the same would hold true around the dye pot. The dyers would be wearing wool.
Have you ever dyed with indigo?
I have not.
Okay.
But I do know something about indigo. It isn't just one kind of plant. There's a variety of plants that give that deep indigo color. However, there are some plants that give a more lasting or deeper indigo than others, and those, of course, would be more desirable.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, if anyone else has any questions, put those in the comments. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. So thank you very much, Mrs. Murphy.
You're welcome. Come back and see me sometime.
Thank you all for joining us here at Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park for our virtual Gold Rush Live. We're really excited that you came and joined us. We're really sorry that we weren't able to put on our event this year because of the COVID-19, but we're really happy that you were able to join us here and that we were able to bring some of these stories to you. Just wanted to remind you that we're also doing this tomorrow. We will have live demonstrations at 10, 11, 1, and 2 right here on our Facebook page. So we hope to see you again tomorrow. Bye!